These days, I don't know how you are getting by, but one of the ways I am is to look for wonderful stories. I'm looking for reminders of how amazing human beings can be, how much we can and do, in fact, care for each other without regard to location, identity, religion, or privilege. And maybe that is why certain anniversaries have caught my attention this year. It has been 10 years since Hurricane Katrina devastated the Gulf Coast and especially New Orleans. And during that crisis, there was the mobilization known as the Cajun Navy. The Cajun Navy saved countless lives. These were just people going out in boats, any craft that would stay afloat, and rescuing as many people as they could, regardless of who they were or their politics. And many of those people displaced found new lives in Texas. We had a chance to kind of see people come in and try to make something new happen. And I also loved being part of Texas when we were for so long, because Texas has its own version of the Texas Navy during major storms. We have the capacity that we were seeing live on TV, the capacity to move large numbers of people out of harm's way. It was something of which to be deeply proud. The anniversary of September 11th and the attacks on New York and the East Coast caught me for the same reason. How many thousands of lives were saved because people connected and led each other out of the buildings and to safer spaces, after the planes crashed and before, during, and after the buildings fell. These were remarkable moments, small and great miracles known by the lives saved as well as the stories told of the people who did the good work and may not have lived to see that they did succeed. I also have been looking for stories of smaller scale, accounts of everyday generosity, of good hearts in action. I have the privilege of being able to hear and share these kind of stories when I'm part of rites of passage, such as weddings, but also certainly such as memorials. This is partially why I say yes whenever I can when somebody says we need a minister to tell this story. Because they're always tales of impact and love that last far beyond the limits of our mortal lives. It is such good medicine for all of us. Accounts of good hearts in action is why we celebrate one another in church as well. Why we say thank you to volunteers. Why we say thank you to people with vision and determination and some practical measures to make a new building happen. We say thank you for the folks who are first to greet us and help us to feel at home. Every week is its own small miracle of a bringing forth of our better angels, because we know we can do so much more together and that we simply need one another. I had such a moment I got to observe just as the service was beginning. There was, if you're not aware, we have a kind of a newish arrangement of cushions and lap desks down here. And there was a child who was coming in to try to find her spot. And as she did, another child dashed over and was like, "Hi," was just there making with enthusiastic waving and making sure that that wave was seen and that child knew that she was greeted by her friend. Every day, miracles abound. I could tell those stories all day long, and I seek them out. We need so many stories, great and small, in this moment because we are so deeply divided and so powerfully able to not care for one another. We are so skilled too at sowing division, at excluding, at naming someone an other, an object, a not human. It's as common as water in middle school sometimes, but not just then, in so many places in our lives, and it has profound consequences at every level of our human society. So I want to just take a moment of understanding how we other people, how we divide ourselves. We need to understand and not underestimate its impact. And maybe even equip ourselves to do better when it confronts us again with the next news article, with the next terrible crime or terrible loss that is then twisted into attacking a whole category of some of our most vulnerable people. Maybe we would be able to not participate quite so much. Because one of the common questions, in part this comes from the question box sermons, because one of the most common questions that appears every year, at least once, in the question box sermon is how do we live with each other amid deep disagreement, amid deep separation? How are we even going to survive? And it's no wonder we would have this question because we feel the impact of being divided into categories and being judged for our worthiness as a result. We feel this from bills and policies and laws on our local and national governmental scales, whether or not government funds are directed or withheld for what was most needed. We feel the impact of our divisions when we can't be with our families, the ones we thought would love us for who we are due to differences in views. We feel the impact in our lives when our own lives or the lives of our friends and family are affected and lead to a more risky existence, fewer resources, more difficult choices, and fewer connections. We need to take a moment and understand how we divide ourselves, how we have patterns of human behavior, of us and them, of belonging and othering, and even the very benefits and pitfalls of belonging. One of the theme for this month is building belonging, but I also want to acknowledge that belonging as a blanket idea isn't always a good thing. It isn't always healthy. We know this from cults, from compulsion, from people who are encouraged to be part of something they really don't want to be connected to. We recognize, even as we talk about division, we recognize it's so confusing and so irrational and non-rational at times to talk about division because there's a whole part of our human being that knows we are so much more powerful and healthier and whole when we are together. We are stronger together than when we are apart. It is so amazing that we keep wanting to connect even when we harm each other so profoundly and for so long. It is stunning to the degree to which we set one another apart every day in ways that are conscious choices, quick decisions with little thought, and in unconscious ways. This divisioning, this othering is a mystery and it's practical and it's deep all at once. It is not a new phenomenon in human life. It is simply part of how we are human in this world. But knowing that, we have the chance to become more aware. And perhaps we simply benefit from the secular scripture that is our news and be observing of how people mock and are simply ugly to one another and say, do we actually want to keep living that out? Because that going along, not speaking up when people are awful, it impacts whether we can remain connected with our families. It impacts the choices we make about whether our children can be around the people they have known for their lives and whether we need to find new places to belong. I mean, that grief of loss and that trauma of harm from people we thought we could trust is part of our Unitarian Universalist communities and has been so for quite some time. These are kind of places. This congregation is a place for sorting out belonging and othering. It is part of what we do as a religious community, but also as a liberal religious community that welcomes folks from all kinds of places. We do so to varying degrees of skill and ability, but we keep trying. And it is powerful and, truth be told, daunting work to try to embrace and to make room for one another, knowing that so many of us come into a congregation such as this from so many places of pain, from so many places of loss, from not wanting to trust institutions of any kind at all, and yet we still need to be together. And so appreciate the readings for today. Fredrik Backman, the author, Swedish author, he talks about love and hate. He says the world becomes easier to understand if you divide. There's this road to temptation, right? It is much easier than love and much easier than holding two thoughts together at the same time. First, we choose a side. So here's the formula. First, we choose a side. Then we choose what is comfortable. And then we dehumanize those not defined as us. And once we've kind of gone through that process, what reason do we have to treat people with respect or regard or as equals with their own liberty and agency? Cole Arthur Riley says, if you are the hands of exclusion for long enough, you learn acceptance only at the hands of someone else's exile. You have found your group, and you know it's your group because you can say no to someone else. You learn belonging as competition, not restoration. It's also a kind of restlessness, she says, for the energy you expend forbidding others to walk through the door of community, to be the gatekeepers, is only matched by the energy you expend competing to stay inside yourself. How much you feel like you have to work to be okay and to be accepted. And so when we operate from hate or from exclusion, we are resisting a more challenging path of acting out of love, a more challenging task of holding multiple truths all at once, that I can have my space and my understanding, someone else can have theirs, and we can exist at the same time and be equals in our humanity. How powerful it is in this particular social and political moment when people say some of these quiet parts about where this is coming from out loud. There's so much harm being done, but there are some benefits. There are some benefits to people saying things that they have been kind of instructed, or the social cues have been saying, don't be so don't be so explicit with this. The specific example came up this week from author Shay Stewart Booley, who is known online as Black Girl in Maine. And her article is titled Megan Said the Uncomfortable Part Out Loud, or Uncomfortable Truths. So, from hyperconservative personality Megyn Kelly of The Megyn Kelly Show, she said, "We haven't felt like ourselves since Barack Obama. He was such a slick snake. This affable guy wearing good suits, looking the part and sounded the part and dressed the part, but so divisive in his messaging." So here's Megyn Kelly articulating in this moment, this week, how uncomfortable so many white people were and are when President Obama came into office. How something was not right because a black guy made it. It was so wrong. It was so deeply biased, this reaction, so deeply based in racial bias in a way that is hard to fathom, especially for those who are so white, who have not had to encounter this level of bias and have not had to question and not have to really unpack how we operate in such a racially oppressive society, as it has been for centuries. Obama's election shook the world for those who never expected that a black man could be president. And as Shea Stewart Booley points out, so much of what has happened since 2008 was inspired by and accelerated by that result. We are in part here because we actually had a black man as a president. Because it's so deeply disturbing to so many people, whether they recognize it or not. And so we have an opportunity to make visible the depth of white supremacy in our country. How much anti-immigration, disenfranchisement, dismantling of government, science, health, education funding, and more comes from this desire to remove any help from Black and brown people, regardless of how it hurts everyone. Regardless. This is where our practice of division gets us, is this moment. At the very least, when someone like Megyn Kelly says this out loud, let us listen to people who, when they say who they are. Let us listen to ourselves when we wonder how we behave as well. What shall we do? What shall we do? Some of us in this moment, in our social moment, are truly at risk and becoming more at risk every day. Our Black, brown, yellow, people of color, indigenous folks are becoming more at risk for being taken away by immigration, regardless of their citizen status. We have more and more laws and regulations and limitations placed on our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, asexual, questioning folks every day, and they know it. Our neighbors and ourselves who are disabled, who are neurodivergent, we have so many ways in which our friends and neighbors are more at risk in real and true ways. And whatever we can do to be of support and of help to one another, of recognizing that, of understanding the depth of the struggle, that can be something we can do. One of the tasks for folks who are progressive, liberal, welcoming, consider themselves open-minded, Unitarian Universalists, and many more, is also to be a little humble. There's so many moments when we might be tempted. Here's our temptation to consider ourselves more open, more welcoming, better equipped, better able to be accepting. And we have the same risks. We are vulnerable and at risk for division as anybody else. There's let's not do an us and them, right? Ooh, we're more welcoming, so we're a little bit morally superior. Let's not do that. Let's not, because that just feeds into it, right? And not because one of the fastest ways we do that is to do the easy path of attributing disagreement to someone else's fear or ignorance, and not understanding that somebody could have a radically different worldview. We just say, "Oh, they're afraid. Oh, they just don't know." A little arrogant of us. Let's not do that. I've been talking to UUs about this for all my life, so I'm just gonna say, I know. I know. And I need to be aware of that too. We must resist in our more progressive circles to be also attracted to comfort and simplicity, to think we know who is in and who is out. We need to not be the hero of our liberal story. We need to not be the center of the universe sometimes. That by itself could be a little earth shaking. Instead, we need to offer critical reflection and put our love of reflection, our love and pride in our big brains, because we do, into examination, into reflection. Who is, in any conversation, who is included in this conversation? When we hear the news, who is speaking? What is their motivation? And who benefits from how people are treated as a result of this information? Who is the voice speaking? What is their motivation? And who benefits from how people are treated? We need to apply this in news and politics and what we share with one another. It is powerful and daunting work, and it is essential as we keep claiming to be based in love, as we keep saying how much we value freedom, liberation, and also wanting a more whole world. We keep wanting to make sure we have asked the questions and wondered and checked out our own participation, even as we seek inspiring stories, welcome them into our lives, make that spiritual practice of holding all the complexity that is around us, and resist the temptation to keep dividing. We need to provide that profound pastoral opportunity to people who need to make a new family because they can't be with the one they love. We need to be aspirational. This is never a fixed work. We are not done pieces of accomplishment and should never be resting on our laurels. We are always in process, always renewing, and always embrace an opportunity to practice what we say we believe and tell these beautiful, powerful stories, incomplete, imperfect, and see each other as human merely being. And in this, we are part and parcel of a larger flow of existence, complex and wondrous, that has room for everyone, variety and distinction and diversity and neurodiversity. It is a miracle we get to do this work. So let us go forth and embrace the complexity, embrace holding more than one thought all at one time, and recognize how powerful we are together than when we are apart. Amen.